"Please, just make it quick," she said when awaiting he decided to shelter her. It was a cold evening when he first saw her. The wind blew fiercely, making the streets empty and quiet. He was walking down the street after a long day, his mind focused on the things waiting for him at home, when he noticed a figure sitting by the alley. The woman was alone, wrapped in a worn-out jacket that didn't seem enough to protect her from the chill. Her face was pale, and her eyes, though tired, held something powerful, a sense of urgency. He slowed his pace, unsure whether to approach. There was something about her, a mix of sadness and fear that pulled at him. As he walked closer, she lifted her head and looked at him directly. For a moment, their eyes met, and he could see the unspoken request in them, the silent plea for help.
He hesitated, but something inside him stirred.
It wasn't like him to ignore a cry for help. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. The woman shifted slightly, her body tensing. She didn't speak at first. Instead, she looked around as if making sure no one else was watching. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost broken. "Please, just make it quick," she said, the words barely audible over the sound of the wind. Her tone caught him off guard. There was desperation in her voice, but also a kind of finality. As though she had no time to waste, as if something was pressing her to hurry. He didn't know what she was asking for, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands were clenched tightly around her bag, as if holding on to it for dear life. "Quick?" he repeated, unsure how to proceed. "What do you mean?" The woman looked up at him again, her eyes wide with fear. She didn't seem to want to explain too much, just that one simple request. She wasn't asking for much, just something to ease the fear she had been carrying. He didn't understand it yet, but he could see that she was scared, and that scared him too. He had seen that kind of fear before, the kind that makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. "I can't stay here," she said, her voice trembling now. "Please, just help me." It was clear now that she wasn't just asking for shelter from the cold. Buddy, she needed more than that. Whatever was happening in her life was bigger than a simple request for a warm place to stay for the night. There was something deeper, something more pressing in her voice, and it left him with no choice but to act. "All right," he said, deciding to trust his gut. But he didn't know what he was getting into, but something about the way she looked at him made him feel as though this was the right thing to do. Her eyes were filled with a kind of quiet gratitude, but also with a sense of worry. "Without any appeal I can be destroyed." She was grateful, yet still fearful. He could tell she didn't trust easily, but she was taking a chance on him. And now he had to make sure he didn't let her down. "Thank you," she whispered, nodding her head slightly. Without another word, he led her away from the alley, guiding her through the quiet streets. He didn't know where they were headed, but his instincts told him to get away from where they were. The streetlights flickered above them, casting long shadows across the road. The night felt unusually quiet, as if the world had held its breath for a moment, waiting for something to happen. As they walked, the woman remained close to him, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. She seemed to be on edge, as if expecting something bad to happen at any moment. The fear that had been in her voice earlier was now visible in every movement she made. She was tense, like a string pulled too tight, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. He couldn't help but wonder what had caused her to be in such a state. But he didn't ask. He didn't push her to talk. He knew that when people were afraid, the last thing they needed was questions. They needed time. They needed space. They walked for several blocks in silence, the only sound being the crunch of their footsteps on the cold pavement. He tried to keep his pace steady, but every so often he would glance over at her. She seemed so fragile, so delicate, and yet there was a quiet strength about her. It was as though she had been through something that had hardened her, something that had made her stronger than she looked. After a few more turns, they reached a small cafe at the corner of a quieter street. It was closed for the night. The lights inside turned off, but it was a place he knew would be empty. It was the kind of place where no one would bother them, where they could wait out whatever it was that had brought her to him. "Come inside," he said, holding the door open for her. "It's safe here." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She stepped inside, and he followed her in, locking the door behind him. The inside of the cafe was dimly lit, with just enough light to see the worn wooden tables and the faded chairs. There was an old couch in the corner, where he motioned for her to sit. He walked over to the counter and grabbed a bottle of water, bringing it back to her. She accepted it silently, taking a long drink before placing the bottle down beside her. "Thank you," she said again, her voice quieter now, almost as if she was afraid to speak too loudly.
He nodded, unsure of what to say next.
He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that her fear wasn't just about the cold or being alone. There was something bigger lurking beneath the surface, something she wasn't ready to share with him yet. "Are you okay?" he asked, trying to break the silence. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. She didn't answer right away, as if she was weighing whether or not to trust him with her story. Finally, she sighed, a deep, long breath that seemed to carry the weight of everything she had been carrying. "I'm not sure," she said softly, staring at the floor. "But I think I will be." He understood that she wasn't ready to open up completely, not yet. But at least she was safe for now. And that was enough for him. He had done what he could. The rest, he knew, would come in time. But for now, all he had to do was listen, if and when she was ready to speak. As the minutes ticked by, they sat in the quiet of the cafe. He felt a sense of peace knowing that for the moment, at least, she was out of harm's way. And for the first time that evening, the storm outside seemed a little less threatening, a little more bearable. The warmth of the small cafe was a relief from the cold night air outside. The woman sat on the couch in the corner, her shoulders hunched as if the weight of her past was still pressing on her. The man had stepped away to make sure the door was locked, keeping an eye out for any signs that might indicate danger. The cafe was quiet, peaceful even, but the silence between them was thick. Neither of them spoke right away, as if both were waiting for the other to make the next move.
He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what he could say to make her feel better.
The fear she had shown when he first met her was still in her eyes, even though she was now safe inside. She seemed to be holding herself back, unsure of how to trust him or anyone else. He couldn't blame her for that. People who had been through what she had, whatever it was, didn't open up easily. But he also knew that she couldn't keep living like this, constantly running or hiding.
He walked over to the counter and grabbed a chair, sitting across from her.
He didn't want to pressure her, but he also didn't want to just sit there pretending like nothing was happening. They had to talk, and he had to make a decision about what to do next. But he wasn't sure what she needed, but he knew that this wasn't a situation that would fix itself in a few hours. She wasn't going to leave him and go back to whatever world she had been living in before. Whatever had pushed her to seek help would eventually find its way to her again. His heart felt heavy with uncertainty. He wasn't sure if he was doing the right thing by offering her shelter. He barely knew her, and yet he had already put himself in a position to help her. It felt like the right thing to do, but it also felt like a risk. What if she was just looking for a way to manipulate him? What if she was involved in something dangerous? But when he looked at her, he didn't see someone trying to take advantage of him. He saw someone who was scared, someone who was in need. She looked up at him then, her eyes meeting his. There was a brief moment of silence between them before she spoke. "I don't want to be a burden to you," she said, her voice softer now, almost hesitant.
"I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of it."
Bess. He could hear the guilt in her voice, the sense of shame that she seemed to carry with her. He shook his head.
"You're not a burden," he said gently. "You needed help, and I'm here to give it."
No one deserves to go through what you've been through alone. She looked down at her hands, which were resting in her lap. She was trembling slightly, her fingers twitching every so often, as if trying to keep herself calm. It was clear that she had been through a lot, but how much, he couldn't know yet. She had said she wanted things to happen quickly, but now, in the silence of the cafe, he understood that there was no way to rush the healing process. She couldn't just forget what had happened to her, not overnight. There was no simple solution to her pain. "I'm just tired," she said after a while, her voice quiet.
Tired of running? Tired of pretending that I'm fine? I don't know what to do anymore." Her words struck him like a blow to the chest.
He could hear the weariness in her voice, the weight of all the struggles she had faced. It was clear that she had been carrying the burden of her past for too long. No one could run forever, and sooner or later they all had to face whatever they were running from. "I can't fix everything for you," he said, feeling a lump form in his throat.
"But I can help you right now. That's all I can offer. Just one moment of safety."
No one should have to live in fear. She looked up at him again, and for the first time he saw a small flicker of something, maybe hope or relief, pass through her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He didn't need her to tell him her whole story right away. She didn't owe him that. He just wanted to make sure that she knew she wasn't alone.
"Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity now, though there was still a trace of uncertainty.
He hesitated for a moment. He could have said something simple like, "Because it's the right thing to do," but he felt that it was more than just that. He wasn't sure why he had been drawn to her, why he had decided to help. Maybe it was because he had seen the same fear in his own life, the same desperation. He didn't want to see anyone else suffer in the way he had.
I don't know, he finally said. Maybe it's because I've been there before.
Brace. I know what it's like to feel like you have nowhere else to go. And when I saw you, I saw someone who needed help, just like I did once.
"Maybe that's enough."
The woman looked at him for a long time, as if searching for any sign that he was being honest. She seemed to find something in his face because after a moment, she gave him a small, grateful smile. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along," she said softly. "I was going to just leave, to keep running." He felt a pang of sadness for her, for the life she had been forced to live, but he also felt a sense of relief that she hadn't given up entirely. She had reached out for help, even if she hadn't known who to trust. And now, it was his turn to make sure she didn't fall back into that place of fear and uncertainty.
"Why don't you stay here tonight?" he offered, his voice steady but kind.
"Get some rest. You don't have to worry about anything right now. You've done enough running for one night."
She looked at him for a moment, as if weighing the offer in her mind. He could see the doubt in her eyes, but she was tired, so tired. He could tell that she needed this, even if she wasn't ready to admit it yet. Boo.
"Okay," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll stay."
Just for tonight. It was all he could offer,
but it was enough for now. He wasn't sure what the future held for her, or for them, but he knew one thing. Tonight, she wasn't alone. And for the first time in what seemed like a long time, that was enough. The woman leaned back against the couch, letting out a long sigh, and he could see the weight of the world slowly starting to lift from her shoulders. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Tomorrow they would figure out what to do next. For tonight, though, she had found a place to rest. A place where, at least for a few hours, she could feel safe. The cafe felt like a world of its own, a quiet bubble in the middle of the busy city, far removed from the harshness of the world outside. The soft hum of the old refrigerator in the corner was the only sound that filled the space, and the warmth from the small radiator by the door made the room feel almost cozy. It was a strange contrast to the tension that still lingered in the woman's eyes. But she sat on the couch, her body curled in on itself, trying to find comfort in the unfamiliar surroundings. He had offered her a safe place, but he knew that true safety wasn't something you could provide just by opening a door.
It wasn't about physical walls or locked doors. True safety came from feeling like you could breathe, like you could finally let down your guard.
James, she wasn't there yet, and he wasn't sure how to help her get there. After a few moments of silence, the woman finally shifted on the couch, pulling her jacket tighter around her. The cold of the night still clung to her, even though she was inside now. She looked at him, her face tired, but there was something different about her now. Maybe it was the way her shoulders weren't as stiff, the way she didn't seem to flinch when he moved, but she wasn't completely relaxed yet. But she was starting to trust him. It was a small thing, but it was progress. Breath. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "For letting me stay."
I didn't know where else to go.
Breaths. "You don't have to thank me. You needed help, and I'm happy to give it." It wasn't a grand gesture, but something in the way she said those words made him realize just how much she had been through. Her life had been full of uncertainty and fear, and she had spent so much time keeping herself guarded. She wasn't used to asking for help, and that made her hesitant to trust anyone, even him, someone who was offering her a safe place to stay. The silence stretched between them again, and for a moment neither of them spoke. He could tell that she was still lost in her thoughts, still grappling with whatever had brought her to this point in her life. Whatever it was, he knew it wasn't something she could just forget or move past in a day. She would need time. "I wasn't always like this," she said after a long pause, her voice soft as though she was testing the words before they left her mouth. He raised an eyebrow, not sure if she was ready to talk, but deciding to listen if she was. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, biting her lip as if she wasn't sure whether to open up. Then, slowly, she began to speak. "I used to have a life. A normal life. I had a job, a place to stay, friends, a family. But everything changed one day. I don't even know how it happened. One day everything was fine, and the next, it wasn't. And now, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not sure where I belong." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Breath. He could tell that she wasn't just talking about her circumstances. She was talking about her sense of self, her place in the world. She had been so lost in her own pain that she hadn't stopped to think about who she was or where she belonged. It was as though the world had knocked her down so many times that she had lost the ability to pick herself back up. I'm sorry," she said, suddenly looking embarrassed.
"I didn't mean to burden you with my problems." He shook his head quickly.
You're not a burden. You've been through a lot, and I'm glad you feel like you can talk about it. But you don't have to do it all at once.
Prospect. Take your time. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something, a sense of relief, maybe. She didn't have to tell him everything right now. She didn't have to carry the weight of her past alone. And that, in itself, was a step forward. They spent the next few hours in quiet conversation. He didn't push her to reveal more than she was ready to share, but little by little she began to talk. She told him about the mistakes she had made, the things that had gone wrong in her life, and the people who had let her down. But she also talked about the small moments of kindness she had experienced, the people who had reached out to her when she had been at her lowest. And as she spoke, he realized that there was more to her than just the fear and sadness. She was strong in her own way, even though she didn't see it yet. She was still here, still fighting, even if she didn't know how to do it yet. By the time the night had stretched on into the early hours of the morning, she had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from the emotional toll of the day. Right, he watched her for a moment, noting the way her body had finally relaxed, the tension that had been there when she first arrived slowly melting away.
He wasn't sure what the future held for her, or even for him.
But for now, she was safe, and that was all that mattered. The morning came slowly, and when the woman awoke, it was as though she had been sleeping for days. The weight of the previous night seemed to have lifted from her shoulders, even though she still carried the burden of her past with her. She stretched, her body sore from the position she had slept in, but it wasn't the pain that woke her. It was the quiet peace of the room, the knowledge that for the first time in a long time she wasn't alone. He had made coffee while she slept, and when she opened her eyes, he was sitting at the counter, his back to her as he flipped through a book. She didn't say anything at first, just watched him quietly. There was something comforting about the scene, about the ordinary, mundane life that he seemed to have, something she had once taken for granted. "Good morning," he said when he saw her stir, offering her a cup of coffee. She smiled slightly, the corners of her mouth lifting as she sat up and accepted the coffee. "Thanks. I needed that." They didn't speak right away. There was no need for words, just the simple comfort of shared silence. But soon the conversation shifted again, and this time it was different. She seemed ready to say something more. "I didn't tell you everything last night," she said, her voice quieter than before. "There's more to my story. And I think I'm ready to tell you now." He set his coffee down and turned to face her fully, giving her his full attention. He had already told her that she didn't have to talk about it if she wasn't ready. But now it seemed like she had made a decision, and he wanted to respect that. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly around her coffee cup. She stared at it for a moment before speaking. "I was running from something. Someone. I don't know how to explain it. I thought if I kept moving, if I kept changing my life, I could outrun it. But it's always there, waiting for me." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and he could see the pain in her eyes. She wasn't just running from a place or a person.
She was running from a version of herself, from the decisions she had made and the things she couldn't undo. "You don't have to run anymore," he said gently. "You don't have to face it all at once, but you don't have to do it alone either."
She looked up at him then, her eyes wide, and for a moment it was as if she was seeing him for the first time.
G wasn't just looking at someone who had offered her a roof for the night. She was looking at someone who had given her more than that. A chance. A chance to stop running. A chance to start over. "I don't know if I can," she whispered, "but I want to try." The words hung in the air between them, filled with hope and uncertainty. She wasn't sure what the future held, and neither was he. But for the first time, it didn't feel so heavy. "I think we'll figure it out," he said, "one step at a time." They sat there together, the weight of the past still heavy, but no longer suffocating. But she wasn't ready to face everything yet, but she was ready to take the first step, and that was all that mattered for now. The days following that morning felt different. The cafe, which had once felt like a temporary shelter, now seemed like a place of calm, a new beginning. They had spent the last few days in quiet conversation, in moments of shared silence, and in the simple act of living. Though the world outside continued to move with its own pace, within those walls there was a sense of stillness that both of them had come to appreciate. For the woman, it was more than just a place to rest. It was a moment of peace in the chaos of her life. She was no longer just running from something. She was beginning to face what had brought her to this point. But she had spent years trying to outrun her past. But here, in the quiet comfort of this small cafe, she realized that running wasn't the answer. She had to face what was behind her in order to move forward. And for him, he had become more than just someone who had offered her shelter. He had become a quiet anchor, someone who had shown her that it was possible to trust again, even when the world had given her every reason to believe otherwise. He wasn't sure where this journey would lead, but he was certain of one thing. They had both found something important in each other. That evening, as the sun began to set, the man sat by the window looking out at the fading light. The woman was sitting at the small table, quietly flipping through a book. It had become their routine over the past few days. Simple, unremarkable, but meaningful. And for the first time, she felt like it was enough. After a while, she put the book down and walked over to where he was sitting. He looked up at her, and there was something different in her expression. A mixture of relief and determination. "I've been thinking a lot," she said quietly.
About what you said. About not running anymore.
He nodded, unsure of where this conversation would go, but knowing that it was important.
"You don't have to face everything all at once," he said gently.
"But you've already made it this far. You don't have to carry everything by yourself." She smiled, though it was a smile that carried a weight of emotion. "I know. And I think I'm ready to stop running. To figure things out."
Ray.
I'm ready to face whatever comes next. He looked at her, seeing the quiet strength in her eyes.
He had watched her over the last few days, and though she had spoken little of her past, it was clear that she was making a choice to take control of her life again, to rest, to reclaim a part of herself that she had lost along the way. "It won't be easy," he said, his voice steady, "but I think you're stronger than you know." She looked at him, and for a moment there was silence between them. It wasn't uncomfortable, though. It was the kind of silence that comes from understanding, from the unspoken acknowledgement that something had shifted. She had come to him as a stranger, with nothing but fear in her eyes. Now she was different, stronger, more certain, and though there was still a long road ahead, she was no longer alone. "I don't... I don't know what happens next," she said, her voice thoughtful. "I'm going to try." It was enough to hear her say those words, to see the change in her. It wasn't about having all the answers, it was about the decision to face whatever came next with courage, with the knowledge that she didn't have to do it alone. The next morning, as the sun rose, they packed up the small cafe, preparing to leave. There was a sense of finality in the air, but also a sense of hope. The world outside was waiting for them, and neither of them knew exactly what it held, But for the first time, neither of them felt afraid. They were ready to move forward, ready to face whatever would come, one step at a time.
As they walked out the door, side by side, the woman looked up at him.
There was no longer a sense of fear in her eyes, no longer the doubt that had once clouded her thoughts. Instead, there was a quiet confidence, a certainty that she could face the future, no matter what it held. Breaths.
Thank you, she said, her voice soft but sincere. For everything.
For giving me a place to rest, for listening, for not giving up on me. He smiled at her, though there was a bittersweet feeling in his chest. You don't have to thank me, Bruce. You made the decision to change. That's all you needed to do. I'm just glad I could be a part of it. They walked together, their steps steady, their paths no longer uncertain. The road ahead was still unknown, but that was okay. They didn't need to have it all figured out. Bess. They just needed to keep moving forward. As they reached the street corner, the woman turned to him. I don't know where we're going yet, she said, but I know I'm ready to take the first step. He nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. One step at a time. That's all anyone can do. And with that, they turned down the road, side by side, ready to face whatever the world had in store. The future was waiting for them, but it didn't matter. Together they could handle whatever came next,